the people who have not been hesitant to make those physical threats are going to learn why they ought to have been. But a lot of people are.
Are you threatening Twitter? Are you threatening Twitter users? I just want them to know that I'll most likely fight back, okay? See these hands? See what Matt Walsh can do?
When I say the left wants you dead, I mean, I say it from experience. And it is actually true.
Because I got those 4 tweets you see. There are literally hundreds of thousands of others. I'm not going to show them, but there's hundreds of thousands of others. And each one, some of them got, what, 6 likes? If you're just tuning into the stream, we're going to be doing a little look at we got to talk about Matt Walsh's new movie again, unfortunately. What is the Clitoris? And it's been doing the rounds. There's some screening parties. He's claimed that it's the most talked about movie in America right now, which is strange because I didn't know he was the director of Morbius. But yeah, I'm curious. He's going to react to his death threats, he says.
My new film, What is a Woman, is now the most successful piece of content the Daily Wire has ever produced. Record numbers of people have watched it. The film has been...
Cool, so you're going to put those numbers out, right? Because you keep saying that. Like, why just show... You could be like, 50 million Americans, 10 million Americans, 5 million Americans, 1 million Americans, 500,000 Americans. I know Matt Taibbi has seen it. There is that.
Trending online for days. It's easily one of the most talked about and debated films of the year.
Do you know why it's trending, Matt? Have you learned that yet? You still haven't responded to every single person posting that picture of the fact that you put a 15-year-old, what you believe to be a girl, topless photo in your movie. You haven't answered that thing.
It's been an enormous smash success and already made, I think, an immediate and seismic impact on the culture. None of this would have been possible without...
Fucking ego on this dude. That's ridiculous. I mean, it definitely was going to be responsible for an entire movement. I'm basically Jesus, manifest, come before you.
You guys in the audience supporting the film and supporting our mission more broadly by subscribing to the Daily Wire. We're trying to
being bigots.
Build something so that we can continue making films like What is a Woman and other sorts of films and pieces of content that will impact the culture in different but still important ways. So if you haven't subscribed yet, I'd ask you to consider going to whatisawoman.com and getting signed up. We may not have the whole, extensive content library of like Netflix, not yet anyway, but we're on a mission and we're making art that matters. We're kind of the...
We're making art. I gotta be honest, we've watched a lot of people with delusions of grandeur. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this before, because I believe him. I believe he feels this way. He seems to be genuinely a little bit like, look at this smugness. I think this is peak smug. I think like this is the smuggiest face anyone's ever made. We're making art. You don't understand. It's a process I have to go through on a regular. I have a muse, you see. It's literally a piece of shit on the fucking floor.
The way I look at it is kind of the scrappy underdogs, the unwelcome intruders in the subscription streaming world right now. But there's a lot of fun to be had in that role. That's the good news. And it enables us to make things that literally nobody else, anywhere else, could or would ever make, like What is a Woman? Now, one of the reasons why nobody would make What is a Woman is because the subject matter is, of course, radioactive. I mean, gender ideology is the ultimate third rail. It's supercharged, considered untouchable by most people. There are increasing numbers of people...
No, Matt, come on. You don't believe that. You talk about it all the time. You've made a career out of this. So have all of you, by the way. Take your pick. Jordan Peterson becomes super, super famous. Transphobia. That's the reason. Steven Crowder, entire career, transphobia. Ben Shapiro, one of his first viral clips, intentionally misgendering a trans woman multiple times, thinking he was a big old strong guy for doing it. And then the trans woman in question was like, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. And then he was like, well, then I'm going to call the hospital. Fucking every single one of them. It's like, this has been how you make money for such a long time. This is your fucking entire industry.
People, I think, who will kind of dance around the edges of the issue, talk about sports
Joe
teams
Rogan
and
too.
bathrooms.
I mean, to be fair,
sort of
actually, Joe Rogan would be an exception. Joe Rogan was famous for a lot of other things before he was like notably, a voice of no trans women in sports kind of stuff. But like everyone else, it's like either a launching pad or just basically the sum total of all the work they do now.
But very few people will go after the heart of this thing.
That's not
It's
fair.
one thing
Crowder
to
also got
suggest
famous
that
for
males
racism.
don't belong
True.
in women's bathrooms. It's another thing to call into question the actual underlying premise of gender ideology and transgenderism.
No one is asking for males to go into women's bathrooms. It's not something on any side. I mean, maybe that's the argument of people who want to commit sexual assault, but that's not what anyone else is asking for.
The thing is, as it turns out, even if you're trying to stay around the edges, it doesn't really work because you can't make an argument against males in women's bathrooms without questioning the underlying premise. If you're trying to keep the underlying premise intact and say nothing about that, then you've already surrendered the entire issue. So that's what we try to do.
That's
in
not
this
true.
film, is
Transphobes
go
want
after
trans
the
men to
underlying
live in
premise.
bathrooms.
And because we succeeded so dramatically in exposing the hollowness at the core of this ideology, and because we knew we had succeeded, we also knew that there would be blowback, to releasing this. So, of course, there was never any thought given to not releasing it. This is a bomb, in effect, metaphorically, and it's a bomb that we knew we had to detonate, come what may. And as
it's fucking the ego.
It's over 9,000!
It never stops expanding. I don't know anyone who has ever put out something that, is reaching such a specific demographic. It's like if I put out ASMR, the Communist Manifesto, and then spent an entire YouTube video talking about how good it did specifically to people who are already in my Patreon, and then go off about how I completely changed the world. I have completely revolutionized everything before you see your very eyes. And he thinks this thing is like his masterwork or something. And that he's saying anything new, by the way. I mean, no one had ever asked this before. What is a woman? No one's ever thought that.
for what is coming my way now, there are the expected things that we've talked about, coordinated campaigns to deplatform me, lies and smears and defamation being spread about me, even to the point of leftists photoshopping tweets to try to embarrass and libel me. Every day I see a new tweet that I never tweeted that's making the rounds online.
Oh, really? Really? Oh, the one that I tweeted out, that one has a link in the Wayback Machine, so I don't know if you want to walk that one back. Yeah, the really yikesy one, the one where you were talking about how if a 12-year-old is raped, then the kid should be born, because that way there's evidence of the rape taking place, and if they have an abortion, no one will ever be able to prove it. Do you remember that tweet? Yeah, that is that one of the ones that's been forged?
This was the extent of the backlash until the last day or two, when the death threats started rolling in. We have our security team tracking those, and the police have been notified. Might have a little bit more specific on those threats soon, but for now, I'll just leave it at that.
Is this a theme? This seems like the third or fourth video we've watched from like a prominent conservative pundit where they're all trying to reframe everything as like, they're coming after me. You should know this. They're coming after me. Tim Pool, we just watched a video where he's like, apparently him and the quartering were simultaneously possibly swatted by the very same person who may have been plotting to kill Brett Kavanaugh, and somehow it all makes sense. All the pieces are coming. It feels like every single one of them is doing this right now.
Also, I should note that I'm an avid fan of the Second Amendment and more than willing to make full use of my constitutional rights should any of these keyboard warriors decide to try their luck in the real world. But the death threats are sometimes not as revealing as the death wishes. And there are a great many of those on Twitter right now directed at me. Most people anyway, are hesitant to make explicit physical threats. And the people who have not been hesitant to make those physical threats are going to learn why they ought to have been. But a lot of people are.
Are you threatening Twitter? Are you threatening Twitter users? I just want them to know that I'll most likely fight back, okay? See these hands? See what Matt Walsh can do?
Are much more confident and feel a lot better about, especially trans activists, who are some of the most vicious and cowardly people on the planet. They're not as shy about telling you what they hope happens to you, because they feel like that gives them a little bit of cover. So just a few examples. I mentioned the death threats that we've been getting on Twitter yesterday. I mentioned it. And here's how leftists and trans activists responded. I'm going to read a few here, just a few examples. One says, seeing fascist bigots scared for their life is so satisfying.
Oh my God, are you serious? Are you serious, Matt? I'm way less famous than you. It's gotten so much worse than this. Like, people have straight up gone on like weird tirades where I'm like, holy shit, why? I didn't know someone would think that, let alone put it out there, like amplify it onto the internet.
Another, hopefully the cops are as effective at protecting you and your family as they were at protecting the children and teachers in Uvalde. Another says, you deserve all of it. Another says, you deserve worse. Another says, haha, good.
Wait, why aren't you showing them?
Good. I look forward to hearing how the cops stood around and watched. Another says, hopefully some of those threats have some weight behind them. Another says, rotten hell.
Wait, hopefully those threats have some weight behind them? There have been some explicit threats made against my life. Police are involved. We knew we'd probably come to this. We're prepared for it. Ah, I see.
Another says, rotten
that
hell.
One's still pretty ambiguous.
I hope somebody carries them out. Another one says,
all of these have like, yeah, they're all like nothing accounts. They're all like, Matt, this is being someone on the internet. You don't even have to be like hate-filled. Do you know what trans people experience every single day in terms of threats? Have you ever looked at a prominent trans person, clicked on show more replies and scroll down? Holy fuck. Like sometimes I'm like, oh man, I've pissed off the wrong people. Someone's like accused me of funding Hamas or something. I'm getting so many death threats. Everyone on Twitter is like, you know, asking for me to Roblox myself and all this kind of stuff. And then I click on like a trans person, especially like a prominent trans person who might have some power, some social clout. Holy shit. Just like hit scroll down and see the kind of things they deal with. Infinitely worse than anything you just showed on screen. Infinitely.
Says LMFAO, hope someone pulls through when you're actively discrediting and threatening the lives of thousands of trans people all over. You deserve.
Again, why don't you go look at those accounts?
To get your.
Yeah, like Keffel's quote tweets. That's a really good example.
Rocked. Another one says, fingers crossed they're credible, and you get the idea. Hundreds more where that came from. I mean, hundreds.
Every single one of those was like one retweet, one tweet. Matt, you could L plus ratio every single one of those people. You realize that.
Also posting this stuff in their own circles online. For example, one account posted a fake obituary for me, which said, breaking, American political commentator and podcaster Matt Walsh has passed away in his Tennessee home. Further details have yet to be determined.
By the way, do you see what happened to Jessie Gender? Because she got retweeted by Matt Walsh, and then directly afterwards, her account started filling up with a whole bunch of like actual hate speech, really fucked up shit. And then she was like, I'm gonna have to leave Twitter for a little while just for like, you know, my own psyche. It's the influx of stuff from Matt Walsh is too intense. And then he retweeted that as a little victory lap, as a little like, ah ha ha, wink, retweet.
And I responded to that post with a link to whatiswoman.com, and they immediately deleted it. Another account posted, RT if you think Matt Walsh should never enjoy another moment of peace as long as he lives. That tweet had 3,000 likes. And I responded to that one with a link to the website as well. And
wait, what? Show that one. Put them on the screen. That's the first one that has more than like 6.
He also deleted it. There are, again, hundreds, if not thousands of tweets like this. A great many of them are...
You are just saying numbers out loud. Hundreds of thousands of tweets like this? Okay. Show them. Compile them.
Apparently without a hint of sarcasm or irony, accusing me of committing genocide. That's their words. Committing genocide against trans people.
And did you get a
threat? And of course I deserve to die. They say I've committed genocide with a documentary. My documentary is apparently, it's like that movie The Ring. You know, remember that in I think it was the early 2000s, where if you watched it, a monster would come out of the screen and kill you in some unspecified but really disturbing way.
Plot.
That's what they seem to think. Anyway.
Unspecified. Did you watch the trailer? Was that too much? It's like, whew, whoa, oh, it's a little too spicy for me. Yeah.
But they could find out for sure if they went to whatiswoman.com and became a subscriber today. Now, I want to make just a few points.
I don't think I've ever seen someone pivot from, and they accused me of genocide. And that's why you should go to my website and subscribe to my movie.
Points about this. And the first is that there are some who will sort of dismiss this by saying that, well, this is how people are on the internet. Happens on both sides, they'll say. And that's not totally true. I mean, even if it was, it wouldn't make it okay, obviously, but that's not totally true. Yes, I mean, anyone on any side of any issue may receive a death threat or two if they get a lot of negative attention for some.
That's what trans people live with all the time. that's their lives. It's not even being famous on the internet. They don't have to be famous. They just have to exist. And not only is it on the internet, it's everywhere. It's everywhere, especially for non-passing trans people. And it is in large part due to bigots like you who keep making and amplifying this fucking bullshit pseudoscience so you can get everyone really afraid. Hey, guess what? I've interviewed one person who detransitioned and deeply regrets it. Let's amplify this story. It needs to be told. Everyone needs to hear it. And then you're like, yeah, that is really unfortunate. That's a very unfortunate story that an individual has. How often does that happen? Do you have statistics on this? Like, how often do people actually experience regret and detransition? And or if they do, how often is that because of the problems in society and how they're treated? Because, I mean, if you did look that up, and we had very clear and a large amount of data on it, and it showed that the vast majority do not regret it, then you doing these little things where you highlight the one story is just serving to amplify your own bigotry. That's it. Like, that's Matt Walsh is fucking, I guess, terrified of trans people, terrified of trans ideology, gender ideology. So it's like, well, how do I get other people to also be afraid like me? I need everyone to be scared. I can't be afraid alone. You know, it's like sleeping with the lights off. So I've got to make my movie and then get everyone really scared, because even people who might be normies will see it and be like, oh wow, this story is so sad. It's the story of someone who regrets transitioning. That's what all the bigots do, every single one of them. They don't actually like come at this with like statistics, data, science, anything. It's always just like, all right, well, here's a scary story. And because of this one scary story, you're probably pretty frightened now, aren't you? Aren't all of you scared?
And yes, there are anonymous trolls posting heinous stuff on both sides. But anyone who's ever poked the gender ideology beehive knows that trans activists are uniquely vicious and feel especially entitled to say and do whatever they want. Let me ask you something. What if there was someone out there who kept a log of every single thing?
I thought there was going to be more to that. I thought there was going to be like, and here's some examples of that. Not just things I'm saying out loud. By the way, is that the end? Oh no, is there going to be more? Or is this an email coming up? Okay, he's got the big one. He's saving the best for last.
BLM, we know what BLM is willing to do. Well, I've said a lot of things and done a lot of things to upset BLM, and I've gotten the blowback for it, but it's never quite like this. So why is it like this with the left-wing trans activists? Well, it's partly because they're amoral narcissists, partly because they've been emboldened by social media platforms and by every other institution to act out in whatever that way they want without consequence. And it's part...
What do you mean without consequence? Again, like when it comes to the broad amount of people who are like marginalized and are on Twitter, they're not universally protected. If you have a smaller count and you're like, you know, a Black American, an Indigenous American, you could be trans, you could be queer, doesn't matter what you are. If you get dogpiled early on, your account just gets deleted. They're gone.
Because, as previously mentioned...
Yeah, I know, that is rich for him to call himself a narcissist, considering the first half of this was basically him saying that he was God. There's basically me and Kubrick. I think that's it. I think that would probably be the two greatest filmmakers of all time. Him less than me, obviously, but pretty close, pretty close.
Told themselves this delusional story, and been told this delusional story, that anyone who criticizes their worldview is a clear and present danger to their very physical existence. One trans activist summarized this delusion quite well in response to my tweet about the death threats I'd received. And it said, here's the thing. We trans people are not prepared to be removed from society. The fact that you were prepared for death threats means that this is an operation, a planned move to kill us. You are inciting violence. We are backed into a corner.
This trans activist, with all of the power that she wields, has 1 retweet and 4 likes.
With a knife to our throat. You see, with my documentary, I have backed them into a corner with a knife to them.
When you retweet someone, Matt, like when you retweeted Jessie Gender, do you see that it gets thousands and thousands of comments and likes because you have a very large social media platform? Do you understand that? Do you understand that you're freaking out over 4 or 5 tweets that were done with accounts with like 1 to 4 likes, and that's the only evidence you've put forward?
Their throat. And this gives them the moral right to kill my whole family. They really believe that. At least they want to believe it, and they've worked very hard to fool themselves into taking this kind of delusional, hysterical nonsense seriously. This is the consequence, by the way, the intended consequence of the words are violence nonsense, because it empowers people like this. It gives them the excuse to be even more vile and vicious than they were already inclined to be.
You started this by saying that while you want to defend your Second Amendment rights, you're going to be reporting those necessary. Like, you have all the power here, Matt. You realize that, right? A couple small little 200 follower accounts saying things about you, they're not going to affect you. You can get all those accounts shut down.
It's also the consequence of our societal obsession with affirmation. You know, these activists have come to believe that they have a God-given human right to be affirmed. That is, to have everyone in the world agree with them and reinforce their self-perception. And they are so convinced of this notion that when they encounter a non-affirming opinion or thought or film, they take it as a threat to their lives. They don't know how to not be affirmed, right? Like most
your film isn't about not affirming people, Matt. It's just repackaging old bigotry. All you're doing is fear mongering. Okay, you're not Spielberg. You're just an asshole.
Most of us, I encounter stuff all the time that doesn't exactly affirm me and my beliefs. So it's just, that's part of life. I don't break down into tears over it. I don't take it as...
But you do make a 12-minute video. And you also... Oh, you get... Look at all this affirmation. Oh, sweet, sweet, delicious affirmation. 48,000 likes. Everyone loves me and knows I'm doing a good job and my movies are so important. Thank you for all those 48,000 likes. Nearly 1 million subs. Oh, I'm the greatest director of all time.
It's going to kill me. Like, there are no words you can say to me that the words themselves will kill me. But over here, this is the attitude. They don't know how to operate in a world that is anything less than 100% affirming all the time.
It's wild, too, because if you want to think about this from, higher level, CRT, let's throw it in the ring, sociological perspectives. At the end of the day, Matt Walsh, he is basically someone who's going to be exerting all of the vectors of power in terms of he is very, very wealthy. He is very successful. He is a cishet white man in the modern age. And he has a very large media apparatus in which to release his information and his bigotry. And at the same time, he's like, I'm going to use all of this to go after gender ideology, to take them down a notch. Keep him in line.
Everywhere, with no exception.
Matt's face looks... I wonder if he's more pleasant drunk. Because he's not pleasant at all. He's quite grating.
Hollywood makes hundreds of movies and shows every year that suck up to them. One film is released on a platform they aren't even subscribed to, which takes the opposite approach, and they feel it gives them moral license to murder the person responsible for it.
You know what? It helps because his mannerisms really play into it. Just like the way he kind of like sways.
When I say the left wants you dead, I say it from experience. And it is actually true.
Because I got those 4 tweets you see. There are literally hundreds of thousands of others. I'm not going to show them, but there's hundreds of thousands of others. And each one, some of them got, 6 likes? So that means 6 other people liked that one tweet.
And that brings me to my final point. And I want to be very clear about this to the people who are posting these things and making these threats. First of all, you don't scare me. Your ideology is a threat to...
You're being a tough guy again at a bunch of tweets that have 0 followers. What are you gonna go after those? Are you gonna fight the tweets? You gonna get out and take swings at the tweets? Jesus. Oh, Matt. Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form. Available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Just, we are prepared to embark on a mighty jihad in your name. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your humble jester, attempting in vain to get you to laugh. To our valiant knights of the Round Table, Benji Arnie, Tech Tink, Scary Earth Human, Tony, DM Rivera, Resident Scarecrow, Sir Nickus, Mayred, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Brandon, Words Greenwood. It doesn't matter what I believe, it only matters what I can prove. Egbert Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Daniel Sutton, Coulter Smith, Jenna Tao, Quiet 185, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, The Tim Caucus, Multimondi, Trevbot, EXE, Brian Ephraim, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojack, Saren 42, Catherine, Ramona Acosta, Incosin, Agent NDN, Violent Orchard, Political Puppy, La Media Panza, Zach Christensen, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We raise our mugs and salute our brave heroes off to another glorious conquest.